Welcome aboard, applicants. Let's begin. I thought we would begin with the first year law students exam, June 2012, question number 2. As with all essay questions, let's begin with the call to question. Number 1. With what crimes, if any, can Bob reasonably be charged, and what defenses, if any, can he reasonably raise? Discuss. Number 2. With what crimes, if any, can Charles reasonably be charged, and what defenses, if any, can he reasonably raise? Discuss. Number 3. With what crimes, if any, can Van reasonably be charged, and what defenses, if any, can he reasonably raise? Discuss. So beginning our answer right now, we'll start with number 1, and we'll say crimes and defenses of Bob. Number 2, crimes and defenses of Charles. And 3, crimes and defenses of Van. And number 2, we want to put down here that there's State v. Bob, and don't forget about State v. Charles. And State v. Van. Okay, make sure our spacing is correct here. Okay, and since we know too what area of law it is, because we know this word here, crimes, is present. Let's make sure we get this highlighted. Crimes for number 1, crimes for number 2, and crimes for number 3. We can put down our shopping list right now. Murder, structure, theft, crimes against the person, solicitation, conspiracy, attempt, and defenses. We can copy and paste this into Charles and Van. Let's do that. Oh, make sure it gets down right here. And keeping this in mind when we read, let's go to reading now. Okay, this is our big picture movie mode read, okay? Van is short and small. One day as he was walking down a street near his office, he was suddenly grabbed by Abe and Bob, who were much taller and larger than he, and was dragged into an alley. Abe and Bob beat Van severely with brass knuckles, and took several items from him, including a ring. Charles had been standing nearby watching the attack. After the attack, Abe and Bob gave Charles the ring they had taken from Van. Van was traumatized by the attack and decided to carry a knife for protection. Not long after the attack, Van was walking down the street near his office when he saw Abe walking toward him. He suddenly felt fear and rage. He quickly pulled out his knife and held it behind his back. Not noticing Van, Abe put his hands into his pocket. Van believed Abe was reaching for his brass knuckles. Van immediately stabbed Abe, killing him instantly. In fact, Abe had been reaching for a bus pass, not brass knuckles. Okay, so starting back up from the top here, Van is short and small. More or less foundational facts concerning Van. One day, as he was walking down a street near his office, okay, street implicating possibly traffic, okay, near office, probably an area where he's very familiar. He was suddenly, right here, suddenly is a big aspect here, and then he was grabbed. Suddenly grabbed, we're talking here possible what? By possible battery, exactly correct. And suddenly grabbed could also mean, I would say that this would more or less be a battery rather than an assault and a battery. So grabbed by what? Abe and Bob. So let's put that down now for Bob really quick here, and Abe. Battery, okay. And remember, suddenly grabbed, we want to put down our facts that brought this about. Suddenly grabbed. Okay. And underneath Charles, we're going to do the exact same thing. I'm actually, let me make sure here. Bob, excuse me. Bob and Charles. Okay, so okay, basically we're just going to put this down for Bob here because we don't have Charles. That's okay. Now, Abe is our third party that's not taken into consideration in our call to the question. So we got to keep that in mind. So just for Bob, it's battery suddenly grabbed. Okay, who were each much taller and larger than he. So we have apparent ability for this aspect here. Okay, and or I should say this: the not only the intent, but the fact that he was able to carry out the Bob was able to carry out the battery, and he was dragged into an alley. Again, still aspect. Now the thing about it is too, you could say dragged into an alley could very well be aggravated battery, but we'll just keep it battery nevertheless. Okay. Abe and Bob beat Van severely with brass knuckles. Now here's the thing, we have right here. I would now we've gone definitely from a battery to aggravated battery suddenly grabbed, and I was going to add here another word that we're going to bring in, brass knuckles. Okay, now right up here. Oh, we also want to take this into consideration. We don't want to walk past issues when they're right there in front of us. Abe and Bob. What is it about this? Well, concerning Bob, we have what? Absolutely correct. You got it. Conspiracy. Okay, and I'm just going to throw in solicitation up here. Merger, conspiracy, accomplice liability. Remember, for after conspiracy, we want to throw in Pinkerton's rule. For all acts of A would be attributable to Bob. So let's make sure we put one down here. Solicitation. One of the two would have had to solicit the one of the other. So that had to have taken place. The solicitation merges into conspiracy upon the agreement. And even if we don't have an actual, verbal expressed agreement, we have an implied agreement through action that each one of these had grabbed Van, and not only that they had dragged him into the alley and beat him severely with brass knuckles. Okay, so keep that in mind. That Pinkerton's rule: all acts of the other would be attributable. All acts of other co-conspirators in reasonable furtherance of the conspiracy would be attributable to the other co-conspirator. Accomplice liability: that there would be aiding and abetting with the intent that crime be committed. We definitely have this here, that they each dragged Van into the alley and beat him severely with brass knuckles. Okay, now aggravated battery is what took place in the alley, and then down here we now took several items from him. Okay, we want this goes into aspect concerning this aspect as to the ring. Okay, so we're dealing with larceny here. Okay, possibly larceny, but what does it have? What is larceny plus force or threat of force? Absolutely correct. I would say here we have robbery, and I would even add this aggravated robbery. This is where we a couple facts here. Items taken. So we get several items took from him, including a ring. Took from Van. Okay, and I'd see ring especially. Okay. Well, now remember, robbery is the aspect of force or threat of force. Okay, we've got remember, larceny is our trespassory taking, carrying away personal property when they're with the intent to permanently deprive the owner thereof. Where battery would say that the trespassory taking through force or threat of force, personal property of another with the intent to permanently deprive the owner thereof. So we want to go through that each of those elements in terms of robbery for Bob. Okay, now after that, after the attack, because they're definitely driving home the point that there was an attack here, Abe and Bob gave Charles the ring they had taken. Now remember, before going, I don't want to read too fast here. Charles had been standing nearby watching the attack. Let's come down here to Mr. Charles. Right here. Under Charles, we're going to talk about accomplice liability. Remember, with the mere presence, does that make him an accomplice? Well, see, the aspect is, and I'd even throw in a quick little discussion here about a conspiracy. And here's the aspect about conspiracy. I would say that they threw him the ring. The possible stake in the venture, had been standing nearby watching the attack. After the attack, Abe and Bob gave Charles the ring they had taken from Van. So given ring taken from Van, which would imply that there would be what? I would say a stake in the venture aspect of agreement for conspiracy, possibly accomplice, but remember, just presence at the scene does not make one an accomplice. The aspect about him being an accessory, I'm sorry, an accomplice would be aiding and abetting with the intent that the crime be committed. So we have to prove those aspects up in terms of accomplice. Don't forget too, we have if we have conspiracy, we're going to have Pinkerton's rule. Okay, now let's further on here now. Let's see. After the attack, okay, we already went through that. Van was traumatized by the attack and decided to carry a knife for protection. This is setting foundational facts for, as you probably can tell, a defense. What defense does that look like? Absolutely, it looks like it could be self-defense. Okay, and we'll consider these facts. Okay, so he started carrying a knife. Okay, we're taking that into consideration for his self-defense. Okay, down here, not long after the attack, Van was walking down the street near his office when he saw Abe walking towards him. Okay, now this is the aspect too. This is Abe is the person that we don't have anything concerning. So, the fact of provocation here concerning Van is that we're looking here. The fact of Abe walking to Van, is that enough for reasonable force faced? This is the aspect. What would that be? Abe walking toward Van. Okay, keep that in mind. Okay, now what happens now? He suddenly felt fear and rage. Keep this in mind here, because we're going to talk about this. If there's a homicide that takes place, this might be enough to mitigate the homicide down to manslaughter, voluntary manslaughter at that. He quickly pulled out his knife and held it behind his back. Okay, so we have his force applied, his potential force right down here, excuse me, would be held a knife behind back. Okay, now coming up here, okay, not noticing Van, Abe put his hands into his pocket. Not noticing Abe put his hands into his pocket. Van believed Abe was reaching for his brass knuckles. Okay, so we got reasonable belief here. Was it reasonable? We'll have to keep that in mind. The belief was what? That Abe was reaching for brass knuckles. Okay, now coming up here now, what takes place? Van immediately stabbed Abe, killing him instantly. There's a click. We have our homicide template in play now. Okay, now homicide. Remember, we want to make sure we talk about actual cause, proximate cause. Remember, actual cause is the but-for test. And we'll walk through these, by the way. Proximate cause, which is foreseeability. Now, we have murder, malice aforethought. Don't forget about degrees. And this would be, first of all, we talked about first degree and second degree. Then we're going to talk about voluntary manslaughter. Remember, we talked about that just a few seconds ago. This is then involuntary manslaughter. Now, particularly voluntary manslaughter through heat of passion defense. Okay. Now, after talking about this, we're going to bring it down a lot of our facts from self-defense down here as well. Okay. Because even and then not only heat of passion defense, I would say we could also bring in imperfect self-defense down here as well. And this is the aspect about honestly but unreasonably. Okay. Okie dokie. And finishing up the facts here. In fact, Abe had been reaching for a bus pass, not brass knuckles, further adding to the fact that this was honestly rather than reasonably. Okay. Now, we already talked about murder concerning Van. Was there any structure crimes? No. Theft crimes? No. Crimes against a person? No. Well, actually, you know what? We could throw in a quick, small discussion concerning battery, which would be the stabbing, but it would have to be quick. Okay. Now, probably assault and battery for the stabbing. Okay, solicitation, conspiracy, we don't have that here. Attempt, no, we have completed crimes. And then we talked about the defenses. So we made sure we went through all of our shopping list. Now, underneath Charles, we have conspiracy, Pinkerton's rule, and accomplice liability. There's no murder in that situation. No structure crimes. We talked about the theft crime concerning Charles being at the scene right here. And then crimes against the person, no. Solicitation, conspiracy, no. Attempt, no. And defenses, no. Make sure to throw in a conclusion at the tail end of this. And quickly going through our shopping list. Okay. Throw in a conclusion. Okay. And I think we'll end on this note here. We may resume this. We may come back and resume this. I thank you so much for tuning in, and God bless.